You ever feel like there are two different people driving your life? One of them has their foot slammed on the gas heading straight for your biggest goals, and the other one, well, they slam on the brakes the second things start looking too good. Now, we're always told this is about willpower, right? Or maybe we're just lazy. But what if I told you self-sabotage isn't a character flaw at all? What if it's actually a design feature, hardwired into your biology? Today, we are pulling back the curtain and looking at the actual blueprint of the self-saboteur.
Just let that one sink in for a second. That single sentence is pretty much the key to unlocking one of the most maddening parts of being human. It's the reason we stick with jobs we hate, relationships that hurt us, and why we shy away from the very things that can make our lives better. Because for that ancient piece of hardware in your skull, what's predictable will always feel safer than what's profitable.
I mean, come on, you know the pattern, right? It's almost a cliche. You finally get your finances sorted out, and boom, you get this wild urge to go buy something huge and ridiculous. Or you're in a healthy, loving relationship, and you find yourself picking a fight over absolutely nothing. You're on the very edge of a massive breakthrough at work, and suddenly you just can't stop procrastinating. Why? Why do we engineer our own collapse right at the finish line? That's the big question we're going to answer today.
So, here's our game plan for deconstructing this thing. First, we're going to tackle the core conflict, what I call the familiarity paradox. Then, we'll give a name to that weird feeling with the success thermostat. After that, we'll map out the exact system at play with the correction loop, and then dig into the deep psychological roots with the identity anchor. And, most importantly, we're going to get practical with tools for expanding your capacity. We'll wrap it all up with a really powerful new way to look at your potential. Your ceiling, your floor. Okay, so let's start with the fundamental conflict here. You and I, consciously, we want to grow. We want to get better. We want to succeed. But deep down, our brain is running a completely different software, a much older software. And its main objective is totally different. It sees your biggest wins not as something to celebrate, but as a dangerous glitch in the system. Look, your brain is basically an efficiency machine that's been beta testing for millennia, and its number one job was never to make you happy. It was just to keep you alive. And what was rule number one for staying alive in a very dangerous world? Stick to the script. Stick with what you know. Anything new, new places, new people, new situations, was a potential threat. And guess what? That ancient software is still running the show. It equates familiar with safe, even if familiar is being broke, or anxious, or unhappy. And that brings us to this next idea, which I think is going to feel incredibly familiar once you hear it. I want you to imagine you have an internal thermostat, but it's not for heat or cold. It's for success. It's for love, for joy, for wealth. And when things in your life get too good, when the temperature rises above that preset number, an alarm goes off. And that alarm has a name: upper limit anxiety. It's that antsy, uncomfortable, I don't deserve this feeling that just creeps in when things are going, well, a little too well. It's that little voice in your head that whispers, this is too good to be true. And it's usually followed by an action that makes sure it isn't true for much longer. You've basically just hit the ceiling of what your nervous system thinks is a safe amount of good stuff.
So where did this setting even come from? Well, for most of us, that thermostat was installed and calibrated when we were kids. We just absorbed the upper limits of our family. You know, how much money was considered a lot, what was a normal amount of love and affection, how much success was okay before you were seen as, getting too big for your britches. Those unwritten rules became our internal blueprint for what it means to be safe and to belong. The only problem is, that blueprint is probably decades out of.
And this right here, this visual, it just perfectly captures that internal tug of war. On one side, you've got your conscious mind, pulling with all its might toward progress, toward something new and better. But on the other side, you've got this deep, primal programming, yanking you back towards what's called homeostasis, that familiar, predictable state of being. And when your life starts to stretch that gap too far, it's like a rubber band, and it sets off this cognitive dissonance alarm. Your brain's only goal is to snap you right back to what it knows. And as soon as that alarm goes off, this whole biological cascade kicks into gear. Your amygdala, which is basically the brain's primitive smoke detector, it just hijacks the whole system. It starts screaming, danger, danger! It completely floods and muffles your prefrontal cortex, the smart, rational, long-term planning part of your brain. So logic, gone, offline. Your impulsive, primitive brain centers take the wheel. And the result? Well, you procrastinate, you start to fight, you eat the junk food, you do whatever it takes to fix the problem and get back to the familiar comfort of the struggle. And this is so important. I really want you to hear this. When you self-sabotage, you are not failing. From your brain's point of view, the mission was a total success. You successfully neutralized what it saw as a threat,
the threat of the unknown, and you return the whole system back to the only baseline it knows how to run. You just ran an outdated safety program perfectly.
Okay, so if this whole thing isn't random, what does the system actually look like? Well, it turns out this isn't chaos at all. It's a predictable, repeatable, and totally automated process. It's a system we call the correction loop.
Let's walk through this 5-step loop, because I promise you, once you see this pattern, you'll start seeing it everywhere. It all starts with step 1, the threshold breach. That's the moment something great happens that exceeds your old idea of yourself. You get the promotion, you meet someone amazing, you hit a new income level. But that great thing immediately triggers step 2, mismatch detection. Your brain's internal error detector goes off. It screams, "Warning, current reality does not match the struggling but safe identity we have on file." This mismatch then leads to step 3, the amygdala hijack. A huge wave of what we call growth anxiety hits you. You feel like a total fraud, an imposter. That feeling is so awful that you're driven to step 4, the sabotage maneuver. You do something, anything, to lower the temperature. Miss a deadline, pick a fight, make a dumb purchase. And finally, you get to step 5, return to baseline. The success is gone, the opportunity is ruined, but that awful anxiety is gone too. And your brain breathes a sigh of relief. It feels safe again, right back in that familiar zone. It's a perfect, closed loop designed to keep you right where you are.
But why? Why on earth is the brain so committed to this old baseline? Why would it prefer a struggle it knows over a success it doesn't? Well, this goes even deeper than just predictability. It's all about your identity. Your brain has an anchor dropped deep into the story of who you think you are.
So think about your self-concept, the story of you, as a vital, critical resource. Your brain works 24/7 to keep that story consistent because that story is its map of the world. And if the story changes too much, too fast, the map becomes useless. From your brain's point of view, if you are no longer the person it thought you were, then you are literally disappearing. And to the brain, that is the ultimate survival threat.
And that right there is the brutal, cold logic of it all. Being consistent, being right about who you are, feels safe. So if your story for 30 years has been "I struggle with money," then suddenly having a lot of it creates this massive internal conflict. Your brain would literally rather you prove the old story correct by getting rid of the money than have to deal with the terrifying uncertainty of writing a whole new story where you're a success.
So here's the bottom line. From a purely biological view, the choice is obvious. The known hell of your current struggle, that's metabolically cheap. Your brain has well-worn roads, neural pathways for that. It knows the script. But the unknown heaven of success, that's metabolically expensive. It needs new roads, new behaviors, a whole new identity. It's exhausting, and to your ancient brain, it is profoundly dangerous.
Okay, so that's a lot, I know. We've diagnosed the problem. We've mapped the system. We get the psychology. So now what? How do we actually fix it? This is where we get practical. This isn't about going to war with your brain. It's about gently, strategically expanding its capacity for what it considers safe. And we've got 4 essential tools in our toolkit to do just that. We've got the upper limit audit, which is all about awareness, somatic tolerance, which is about training your nervous system, identity expansion to rewrite the old blueprint, and finally, the 1% shift to make progress that flies right under the radar. All right, tool number 1 is your first line of defense. The absolute moment you feel that old familiar urge to procrastinate, to start a fight right after something good happens, just pause. Take one deep breath and say out loud if you can, "I'm having an upper limit moment right now." That's it. The simple act of naming it yanks you out of that emotional, amygdala-driven hijack and brings your logical brain back online. You go from being the actor in the drama to being the observer of the machine. Now, this next one is about training your body, not just your mind. It's called building somatic tolerance. Somatic just means related to the body. So when you get a win, a compliment, a moment of real joy, instead of just brushing past it, I want you to stop for 5 minutes. Do nothing else. Just sit there and actually feel the success in your body. Notice the sensations. It might feel a little weird or uncomfortable at first. That's the anxiety. But by staying with it, you are actively retraining your nervous system that this feeling, this good feeling, is safe. You're literally expanding your body's tolerance for joy. Okay, remember that identity anchor we talked about? This tool goes right for it. You have to consciously upgrade your own story. Stop saying things like, "I'm just not good with money," or "I always mess up relationships." You have to start creating and finding evidence for a new identity. Things like, "I am someone who handles success with ease and grace."
I am capable of building and keeping a healthy, loving relationship. When you change the blueprint, the mismatch detector never even has a reason to go off.
And finally, you've got to be a little sneaky. Huge overnight transformations are the fastest way to set off every alarm in your brain. So instead, just aim to raise your success thermostat by 1%. Just 1% at a time. Get a tiny win and celebrate it. Make an incremental improvement and acknowledge it. These little shifts are too small to register as a threat, which lets you slowly, consistently expand your capacity without ever triggering a system-wide panic.
This is the whole secret. Not some giant, heroic leap. Just this. 1% more. 1% better. Day after day. This is how you slowly and methodically turn up the dial on that thermostat without the system ever knowing what you're up to.
So let's bring all this home with one last really powerful idea. Once you truly understand this entire mechanism, your whole relationship with your own limits, it just changes completely. You stop seeing your inner saboteur as an enemy, and you start to see it for what it really is.
Your self-sabotage isn't some evil force trying to ruin your life. It's a deeply confused, deeply misguided guardian. It's an ancient survival program that's just trying to protect the only version of you that it's ever known. And when you can see it that way, you can approach it not with anger, but with compassion, and a clear strategy to help it feel safe as you evolve.
And this is the thought I want to leave you with. That upper limit, that feeling of a hard ceiling on what you can achieve or how happy you can be, it's not a permanent wall. It's just the next floor. Your job isn't to smash through it. It's to gently, patiently, and consistently build the capacity to stand on it and then walk on it comfortably. It's the floor of your next level. And now you have the blueprint to get there.